Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization.
How many innocent Americans have these people hurt?
Fear is the best motivator.
When Mexico sends its people...
They're invading, they're murdering, they're raping.
How many moms are grieving because of our sanctuary cities?
You don't have to talk about politics, you have to talk about how the brain of a human works.
Critical race theory is poison.
These people hate white people?
There is now a white fear industrial complex.
Mexican criminals, Black Lives Matter terrorists,
radical Islamic terrorism.
Where many people get very rich and very powerful by telling white America that they are under constant assault.
They want to steal your liberty, your freedom.
I want surveillance of certain mosques.
This is strategic racism.
We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob.
Tapping into white grievance and anxiety, and then exploiting and creating more and more of it.
Chaos in the streets, in the schools.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats.
This country is being invaded.
And when you're scared, you fight back.
We want our country back!
White supremacist protests turned violent.
Panic in El Paso this morning.
Motivated by anti-immigrant hatred.
13 people were shot, 10 of them killed.
He specifically targeted black people.
We're under fire. We're under fire.
Talk in the suburbs of tanks and troops and terror in the streets has led her to the pistol range. A grandmother, fearful.
The little manuals that you have, keep them with your cookbooks. They make a pretty good reference.
The gun is suburbia's new tranquilizer. These housewives in Dearborn, Michigan, an all-white city of 100,000, are learning to use it. All-white Dearborn is on the edge of Detroit, which is 40% black. Fear and hate are the only bonds.
As we look at America, we see cities enveloped in smoke and flame. We hear sirens in the night.
When Nixon ran for president in 1968, he came up with a template that countless other politicians would use. Scare white voters about race without being openly racist.
The city of Washington, D.C. has now become the crime capital of the world.
So he really started talking about law and order.
The law and the order and the justice that all Americans want.
And crime in the streets and the right of people to be secure and protected from crime. Knowing that, many people had a racialized understanding of crime. Crime as something done by black people and done to white people.
We're going to launch a successful war against crime in the United States of America.
We know that for white voters, law and order has a particular connotation.
Everybody that lives with the colored has to move.
Why?
Because you're not safe walking the streets at night. You cannot leave the house.
Nixon has these theorists on staff who are coming up with theories about how to accomplish winning the votes of white Americans. One of the most eloquent is a young man named Kevin Phillips, and he says that politics is the organized, deployment of hatreds. The argument, basically, is that if Republicans want to become the dominant party, they have to lean into the most epic hatred in America of all, which is the hatred of white people for black people.
He says the whole secret to politics is understanding who hates who. And if you can figure that out and tap into those hatreds, you can win elections. And at the time, who hates who boiled down to whites who'd fled the central cities were scared about African Americans, scared about them coming out to the suburbs.
Let me tell you one thing. You better not show his face in front of my house, because if it means my own life, I'd shoot him. Fear is fear, and when you get fear into you, you'll do anything.
I say to you that when the time comes that we have fear in the streets of our cities, it's not time for the old leadership, it's time for new leadership.
He has another young staffer named Pat Buchanan who says very much the same thing. We have to divide the country in two. And if we divide the country in two and end up with the bigger half, then we will be able to, dominate the future.
Shoot to kill. If they're old enough to violate laws, shoot them. If there's laws for us, there's laws for niggles, let them start obeying them.
Every home should have a shotgun.
to ward off would-be attackers or terrorists who may invade white neighborhoods.
Nixon's strategy of fear-mongering works. He wins in 1968, he wins again in 1972.
That's why Richard Nixon won the single biggest landslide in American history in 1972, 49 states. It wasn't because of his personality. Nixon won because he promised what his opponent refused to promise: law and order.
The typical Republican voter was the kind of man for whom Richard Nixon had programmed his campaign. And though Nixon never really said it, that forgotten American who voted for Nixon also was white.
Now, there's a lot of things going on in the 1972 election: Vietnam War, unrest on campuses, the feminist movement. It wasn't all race, and yet I think primarily it was race. Not all race, but primarily race. No Democratic candidate for president since 1964, not Jimmy Carter, not Bill Clinton, not Barack Obama, not Joe Biden, has carried a majority of the white vote. American electoral politics after Richard Nixon's victory is first and foremost about racial resentment.
Good morning. Welcome to Fox News Channel.
This is Fox News Now, all the news you need in 15 minutes.
Rupert Murdoch is one step closer to realizing his dream of a 24-hour global news channel. His conservative fingerprints are smudged all over his newspapers. Many analysts wonder if he will use the TV news channel to spread his gospel.
In 1995, Rupert Murdoch hired me as president of Fox News to create a proper news division. But in 1996, Rupert hired Roger Ailes as chairman of News and Cable. Roger Ailes' background was largely Republican and conservative.
Ailes is known as a conservative pit bull who masterminded political campaigns for Ronald Reagan, launched Rush Limbaugh's TV show.
We just expect to do fine, balanced journalism.
Roger was a conservative hack, hitman in Republican politics, and he got Richard Nixon elected. And that ought to tell you something.
Let me put it this way. I don't believe anyone will ever be elected to a major public office again without the skillful use of television.
And that skillful use, is that an illumination of the issues or an emotional sell of the man involved?
I think both.
Roger, after he's hired, contacts me and says, let's go to lunch. And he says, I need you to stay on because I don't know anything about news, he tells me. And he said, let me ask you a question. Why are you a liberal? And I was taken aback, and I said, I'm a liberal? He said, well, you worked for the Communist Broadcasting System, CBS. And then over the next minute or two, he started railing against the media. He said that the media is all liberal.
The American people are very smart. They know the difference between news, facts, analysis, commentary, opinion, spin, and BS. The other news organizations won't tell you the difference. We will.
Roger Ailes was the perfect Fox News viewer. He was an aging white male Republican who claimed he didn't recognize the country he was living in anymore.
Quick poll. Are we in a state of moral decline?
The fact of the matter is, a third of all children today are born out of wedlock.
Gay Ed. It could become part of your child's school curriculum. We report both sides of the story. You decide.
He saw a lane where everybody else is liberal, and I can create a conservative channel, and that will speak to millions of people, and I will be able to win them over.
I had to launch Fox News, and we had no studios, control rooms, stars, programs, or anything else. But we did have an idea, and we knew there was an audience.
I said, I do not do alternative news channels. I only do journalism. And I left. But that is where he started.
He basically created a channel for people just like him, for people who were afraid of the changes that were roiling America, for people who wanted to pull the country back to when he thought the country was a better place.
We must say now that we are a nation under siege. Right now, we are a nation under siege.
The sea change of 9/11 was that suddenly everyone was like, what's going on in the Middle East? Like, what is this religion, this Quran? They're teaching to hate America.
9/11 was the turning point for Fox News. Fox was immediately catapulted into the ratings stratosphere.
And America has been under attack this day, the 11th of September, 2001.
Certainly there are many countries in the Middle East who don't like us, who fly heavy jets. Iran does. Syria does. Iraq does.
It becomes us versus them, a clash of civilizations.
Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
After 9/11, all the American media was unfair to Muslims, but right-wing talk radio and cable channels like Fox News took it to another level.
I heard a guy on a news show once say, it was actually right after 9/11, and he said, you know, the Muslim holiday of Eid, which is the holiday after Ramadan, is spelled E-I-D. And he said, if you spell it backwards, what does it spell? It spells die.
Many Americans have long suspected that some in the Muslim world are so fanatical, they believe murder is acceptable in the name of their religion.
When I interviewed insiders at Fox, the term brown menace came up over and over again. They are programming to stoke fear of the other, usually a brown-skinned person who is frightening to the white Christian audience.
It's shaping up to be a world war between Muslim fanatics and the rest of us who don't want to be killed by people who say Allah wants it done.
Having a political family that was just, you know, very plugged into the right-wing media, Fox tells them what to think about politics.
It's either we stop them or they're going to make mashed potatoes out of us.
You have to be careful about Muslims who have a very strong, in many ways a refined religion, but a very strong religion which supersedes any sense of nationalism wherever they go.
I think what's so often underappreciated is that so much of this is about the money. Rupert Murdoch's programming choices, Roger Ailes' creation of Fox News into what it is today. It's about the money and power.
These people are not rational. They are not going to respond to your call, Reverend. In fact, they would blow your brains out if they got a chance.
I think that their coverage was irresponsible at times. It wasn't balanced, and it really ends up dividing the country and leading to violence against Muslims, inappropriately and unfairly.
My bag got flagged through the conveyor thing at Tampa International Airport. And they opened up my bag, and then they pick up the Quran. And then it was like, we're going through all your stuff now. Your instinct in that moment is to, for me, was to get sarcastic, right? And just be like, oh, so you're looking for the bomb. I'm sorry. No, God, you know, I left the bomb at home. I am the worst terrorist. I'm gonna get so fired. Oh my God. This plane is gonna make it.
The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam.
Everyone applauds George W. Bush for this famous speech he does after the 9/11 attacks, where he says, Islam means peace, Muslims are the enemy.
Islam is peace.
I could tell you as an American and as a Muslim American, based upon the policies of the Bush administration, they were able to weaponize racism and fear and anxiety to turn a majority of Americans against their Muslim neighbors.
We are at war. We are at war with terrorists.
You hear about terrorists, which is a race-neutral term, but post 9/11 meant Muslims.
Chasing down terrorists and criminals.
The war on Islamic fascism.
Militant Islamic fundamentalism.
Islamo-fascism and the terror that has been utilized by Islamo-fascists and unleashed on liberty-loving peoples.
They went after our mosques. They went after our institutions.
When you are at war, civil liberties are treated differently.
The NYPD spent years surveilling innocent Muslim Americans, and they found zero actionable threats.
I think that a lot of the people in the administration, and the Bush administration, you'd find, were genuinely saying, we need to do what we can to protect the homeland, right? Like, it's this combination of earnest policy people and like political people who are trying to color between the lines, and probably a handful of rat fuckers who are trying to think about, okay, what can we do to get people pissed?
Our strategy is this.
we will fight them over there so we do not have to face them in the United States of America.
In the case of George W. Bush, he goes to war against 2 Muslim countries.
Our war on terror begins with al-Qaeda, but it does not end there.
There's no way he would be able to achieve his policy objective that he dearly wanted of going to war in Iraq unless he weaponized, that kind of fear against Muslims after 9/11.
This buildup after 9/11 and the uncertainty is all a part of a gigantic anti-Muslim campaign, divide the country, and that lays the groundwork to be able to go in and attack Iraq.
My dad and I would always talk politics, and we were very pro-Iraq war. We'd say very horrible things about Muslims and Muslim countries.
The reason that Islam, as it's constituted today, is a terrorist organization is because the theology feeds the terrorism.
I'll tell you what you do. You racially profile.
The Republican strategists and conservative media didn't give a fuck about the impact on Muslim citizens day-to-day lives, right? And whether their overheated rhetoric was having a real negative impact on them.
We're facing an enemy, the Islamo-fascist movement. Yeah. It is Hitler in a headscarf.
And I can, even say from being in that world at that time, that was an eye-opening thing.
I am not going to stop until I have executed at least 10 Muslims. You have no right to be in this country.
In Ohio today, another mosque vandalized. Saturday, a Pakistani Muslim shot dead in Dallas. And in Arizona, a gas station owner shot and killed. Not an Arab or a Muslim, but an Indian Sikh. His temple fears anyone who even looks like America's new enemy is a target.
The ultimate threat is the possibility of their succeeding and getting, say, a biological agent or a nuclear weapon, smuggling it into the United States, into one of our own cities, and raising the specter of being able to kill hundreds of thousands of Americans.
Presently, the nation currently stands in the yellow condition, an elevated risk.
There was a color chart. We're at orange today. No, we're at brown.
Raised terror alert level. The government saying we are now at orange. That's high alert.
To increase that threat condition designation to the high-risk category.
Explosive claims from Tom Ridge, the country's first Secretary of Homeland Security. In a new book, Ridge accuses top advisors to George W. Bush of playing politics with America's fear of terrorism before the 2004 election.
Ridge claims he felt pressure to raise the country's terror alert level during the run-up to the 2004 elections.
The episode left him disillusioned. He tendered his resignation within a month of the election.
It was perpetual fear, manufacture anxiety, manufacture instability, and the only person and the only regime that can bring you stability and security was who? George W. Bush and the Republicans.
Now to the Barack Obama story. After months of speculation, the freshman senator from Illinois says, yes, he does want to be the next president of the United States.
A Newsweek poll shows that 12% of America believes that you're a Muslim, and 26% believe you were raised in a Muslim home. A lot of misinformation.
His religious background scares me to death.
I won't vote for the man just because he's Muslim.
Muslims as a people were so viciously demonized for years and years after 9/11 that it makes a twisted amount of sense that the birtherism lie about Obama portrayed him as a secret Muslim.
Then they get President B. Hussein Obama in there, and he has massive majorities in the House.
Why do you keep saying B. Hussein Obama?
Well, that's his name.
I know.
It's shocking
it's also Barack
that he's probably going to be our next president, President Hussein.
When you've got a name like Barack Hussein Obama, that's not a normal American name. Okay.
I was working at the Republican National Committee, and I would approve our mailers. It's the little mailings we send out to old people, so they give $5. They can be part of the RNC Platinum Club if they join. And they would call him Barack Hussein Obama. And I had a general policy of, I would always cross out Hussein. There's no point in including Hussein Obama except for a racial dog whistle. I got called into the RNC Chief of Staff's office, and the Chief of Staff's like, what's the problem here? And I said, well, we don't use Hussein in our PR stuff. And they're like, well, this stuff works. This is how, we get more money in. I accept your objection, but we're just gonna keep doing it.
tell me he's American. No, he is not.
They don't want to claim American. They want to be African American. Well, I want people that want to be American.
I'm afraid if he wins, the black will take over.
For a lot of white communities, the idea that there could be a black president was so impossible, so foreign, that it almost acted like an alarm bell when it went off.
Are you ready to have a black man president?
No. I don't think we're ready for a black president yet.
It's not necessarily because of anything Obama did. It's what that visually meant to so many of those, white voters for whom an Obama was an impossibility, in their imaginations.
And CNN can now project that Barack Obama, 47 years old, will become the president-elect of the United States.
I had the honor of calling Senator Barack Obama to congratulate him. Please.
You get the hope that Obama represents, but also the fact that this black man has ascended to the White House, so it deepens racial divisions.
Obama and his wife, I'm concerned that they could be anti-white.
And you get this census report, which says that America's fast becoming a majority-minority nation.
The Census Bureau has long predicted that whites would drop below 50% of the population by the year 2050. This new data suggests that shift could come far sooner.
And that statistical data point is embodied in the fact that we just elected a black man to the White House.
When the census report comes out, this sent shockwaves through the country, but certainly through the white community.
He was the personification of what they were afraid of a country that was no longer run by whites.
Arrest Obama! Arrest Obama!
This is why you see the rise of gun sales in this time, the rise of militias, the rise of these politicians really preying on having this black man in the White House. You're not safe, and I'm here to keep you safe.
Right before Obama took office, the economy crashed, and he inherited a massive problem that he was going to have to solve.
This morning, Wall Street begins the day holding its breath. The Dow plunged more than 500 points yesterday.
The Dow taking another breathtaking nosedive.
All hell breaks loose, right? And the nature of that hell, right, takes many forms. The one that's most obvious is the Tea Party.
And across the country today, thousands of people protested over the tax system, demonstrating against what they call big government spending. These self-styled Tea Parties were aimed squarely at President Obama and the Democratic leaders in Congress.
What their real grievance was summarized by Rick Santelli with that original soundbite from the floor of the Chicago Board of Trade.
How about this, President and new administration? Why don't you put up a website to have people vote on the internet as a referendum to see if we really want to subsidize the losers' mortgages?
They're replacing hardworking people like me with somebody who doesn't deserve it, who's going to get money from the government.
This is America. How many of you people want to pay for your neighbor's mortgage that has an extra bathroom and can't pay their bills? Raise their hand. How about we all? President Obama, are you listening? We're thinking of having a Chicago Tea Party in July. All you capitalists that want to show up to Lake Michigan, I'm going to start organizing.
Hundreds of Tea Parties planned in every single state.
This is highly promoted by the right-wing conservative network Fox.
We were one of the only organizations to give it any publicity or PR prior to the fact that it happened.
The thing I think that at the time, a lot of people in my shoes, which is in white Republican consultant shoes, is we really did convince ourselves that the Tea Party was legitimate grievance about government spending.
It's a false accusation that Tea Party Americans are racist.
The people that are involved in the Tea Party movement and other grassroots organizations across the country, Susan, they're not racist.
And I think this is an example of our own naivete and wishful thinking, right, and compartmentalization and all those tricks that you do to yourself.
Tired of hearing about the black colleges. I'm tired of hearing black.
We can encapsulate it as communist Kenyan Muslim.
Yes.
Clearly now, with the benefit of hindsight, The Tea Party was a racial grievance uprising against the first black president.
If you think about a literal dog whistle, it's a whistle used to train dogs. It blows at a very high frequency. Human ears can't hear it, but dogs can. So as a metaphor for political speech, it's directing our attention to speech that's also working on two levels. On one level, silent about race, but on the other, triggering strong racist reactions. So think about terms like welfare queen, illegal alien, thugs, gangbangers. These are terms that on their surface are silent about race. They don't mention race at all. And yet, if you pay attention to the mental images that come to mind with these terms, you can understand the racial power they have.
The Barack Obama administration is actively seeking to expand the welfare state in this country.
You know, you have Newt Gingrich on Fox calling him the food stamps president.
Unconditional efforts by the best food stamp president in American history to maximize dependency.
Newt Gingrich penned it pretty well when he said that President Obama is the food stamp president.
He was just seen as like this avatar of, you know, everything that's bad about liberals and things like this are just thrown onto him.
The idea was that it wasn't just Obama, but everything that Obama touched that became racialized.
When Obama gets 95% of the black vote, is that racist? He is creating a racial divide.
This president, I think, has exposed himself as a guy over and over and over again who has a deep-seated hatred for white people or the white culture.
So all of a sudden, the Democratic Party, healthcare, became racialized.
Rush Limbaugh has declared that the president's health care reform package is a civil rights bill and constitutes reparations.
This is returning the nation's wealth to its quote-unquote rightful owners. This is a civil rights bill. This is reparations, whatever you want to call it.
And then you have this controversy over there's a government program for low-income people giving them phones because you can't do anything without a phone. And so this clip is always passed around of this African-American lady saying, I'm gonna get like an Obama phone.
Everybody in Cleveland, low minority, got Obama phone. Keep Obama in president, you know? He gave us a phone.
You've seen the YouTube of the Obama phone woman. How are you going to get a free phone? Well, you got to vote for Obama. You got to be on food stamps.
No one deserves a free phone.
If you're unemployed, you've got welfare, you got food stamps, you got subsidized housing, you got free phones, you got free health care. You're better off unemployed than working. Isn't that what this is all about?
It means Obama thinks he's a king.
Obama runs for re-election in 2012, and again you see his opponents focus on where he's from and whether he's Muslim.
No one's ever asked to see my birth certificate. They know that this is the place that we were born and raised.
I would get phone calls from Fox headquarters. They would call me up to say, look, this whole business with the birth certificate with Obama, you know, what do you got for us? And I would say, look, he says he's got a birth certificate and he has a birth certificate. Until such time as anybody can prove that he doesn't, I got nothing to say. And they would pass it off to some show host or something like that.
Tonight, we've assembled an all-star panel to do a critical analysis of the president's birth certificate.
I believe that he is a Muslim.
You do?
Yes.
How many of you believe that here?
How many believe?
He doesn't have a birth certificate. Now, he may have one, but there's something on that birth, maybe religion, maybe it says he's a Muslim.
You know, that doesn't embarrass me if people call me a birther. When we're finished with this interview, I'll show you some YouTubes. You know, the YouTubes are infallible.
Another 4 years for President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden. They win re-election in the Electoral College. They're winning the popular vote right now.
Latinos for the first time in our nation's history in double digits nationally. And look at that. The president winning even more of the Latino vote than he did 4 years ago, 71%. This is a crisis for the Republican Party on the national level going forward.
Barack Obama won the presidency again and, you know, obliterated this white candidate.
The two big questions for Republicans tonight: what went wrong, and where do they go from here?
And suddenly the Republican Party realized, oh my goodness, we really have failed to, you know, appeal to communities of color.
We cannot be a party of just white people. That's not going to cut it.
And so they published an autopsy report. And it was this breathtakingly honest report that talked about the Republican Party's failure to do outreach in communities of color, among Hispanics, among Black Americans, and other marginalized groups.
Many minorities think that Republicans don't like them.
or don't want them in our country.
The report's presented and it makes national news.
Focus groups called the party narrow-minded, out of touch, and stuffy old men.
We made it very clear. We urged Republican leadership to lead on immigration reform. We felt comprehensive immigration reform was needed. There was great interest in it at the political level.
Virtually every group that's looked at immigration reform, except for one, has said that immigration reform would be a net positive for the economy of the United States.
The GOP now is officially supporting comprehensive immigration reform, something that's been very, very controversial in the GOP for years.
There was this historic bipartisan immigration reform bill in 2013 and 14. There was John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, along with a number of Democrats working for immigration reform.
A huge bill on Capitol Hill today. The Senate about to vote on a massive immigration reform bill.
The GOP leadership wanted immigration reform to broaden their racial appeal, but the far right of the party, they opposed it.
Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon were working concertedly with Breitbart to attack the immigration reform bill by whipping up hysteria about the immigration issue and whipping up white racial anxiety.
The autopsy comes out and says this whole thing's blamed on we didn't, get the Hispanic vote, and what we have to do is have amnesty and all these types of, we have to basically concede to Democratic policies. And at the same time, this guy named Sean Trendy, who's a lawyer, writes a 2 or 3 part series for Real Clear Politics.
I heard Barack Obama make the comment, you guys have to appeal to non-white voters or you'll never win another election. I just thought that's not right. So I wrote this column about actually if the GOP could figure out a way to appeal to white voters and increase their vote share there, they could more than offset their losses among non-white voters. And so that's the idea of the missing whites.
And so Trendy's thing was quite interesting to me about the whole white working class element of it and how really both parties had abandoned it. It was pretty obvious to me. It kind of reinforced what I felt.
There were a lot of white voters out there that were gettable for the GOP that for whatever reason the Republicans weren't pulling them to the polls.
So you come up with this strategy. How do people respond to it publicly?
Oh, they hated it.
I had a dinner with Jeff Sessions and Stephen Miller. Senator Sessions, let's say this, had a few bourbon and branches, okay? A lot. And we go through those policies that we believe strongly is what's needed to drive the Republican Party to actually start to get an electoral majority.
They went over some election analysis by Sean Trendy, and they interpreted this analysis to mean that they could launch a popular movement.
How did the three of you, what's your game plan to push back on immigration reform?
We have to stop it in the head. We know something's going to come up that year.
If this bill were to pass, wages would go down, unemployment would go up.
We knew we had to stop it. We had to stop it legislatively, and we thought we could stop it.
So what'd you do?
Well, first off, there were articles every day. There was everybody on radio shows and TV. We really pushed the thing out.
We should be taking immigrants who are better than us, not worse than us. But instead of skimming the cream, we are scraping the bottom of the barrel, taking care of other countries' internal problems, taking their terrorists, their losers, their poor people.
I had a phone interview with Steve Bannon in 2014. I was walking around Barnes & Noble in Lynchburg, and he was just firing off questions like he does. And he said, "What's your perspective on education?" And I would just deliver the true believer conservative lines. And then he said, "What do you think about immigration?" All I said was, "It affects everything." And he was so excited and enthused by that answer. He yelled, "Yes!" And I heard him through the phone. I actually pulled it away a little bit okay, he's really excited about that. And I was hired like that.
We kind of put a network together of people that just continued to put out more and more information. Look, our whole thing is if you put out information and you have force multipliers that just drive it, people will start to absorb it themselves.
It's the servant class that is coming in, whom taxpayers need to support.
For everyone who's a valedictorian, there's another 100 out there that they weigh 130 pounds and they've got calves the size of cantaloupes because they're hauling 75 pounds of marijuana across the desert.
I mean, it's what do they say, the Russian active measures, it's, lying through a fire hose. I mean, you're just overwhelmed by the lies.
A lot of the people coming to the country are working for drug cartels. A lot of the people have wreaked havoc upon communities.
The strategy was to take reactionary, racist feelings against immigrants non-white immigrants, and to present it to the base as a political choice made by elites who betrayed you, the working white man.
Do you realize we're the second-class citizens? You secure that border to protect us.
As if we were being deluged by a wave of non-white immigrants.
You're going to have a flood of new immigrants into the United States.
They're invading, they're murdering, they're raping.
As one officer said, a tidal wave of new illegality in the future.
And that successfully turned public opinion against immigration.
This country is being invaded by foreigners with diseases and crime.
These are going to be more jobs taken away. Letting Muslims come across the border. They are finding Qurans on the ground.
When I hear, let's go after the missing white voter, I start to think, oh, Lord.
There's an article in The Nation where one of their editors called me a white supremacist. A lot of people took the suggestion that this is a path that the GOP could take as me basically calling for the GOP to be the party of white people. And that's absolutely not what I wanted. It was kind of an academic exercise.
I'm just saying, if you want to look at the cold calculus of electoral politics, it works out a little different than I think a lot of people expect.
So it was like in 2013 when I was getting all these attacks, I thought, wouldn't it be great in 2016 if a candidate came along and did this and proved me right? And then the monkey's paw finger curled. Because I did not have Donald Trump or anyone like him in mind. And he came and kind of took the strategy and put it on steroids.
I'm Donald Trump, and you're watching Fox and Friends. And if you turn the channel, you're fired.
Everyone knows Trump built an image of himself via The Apprentice. But I believe it was Fox that was more important to his political rise.
Does he have the power to fire me in this
Brian,
company? You're fired.
Any
further questions? Yeah, I guess
Get out. Because he was given by Roger Ailes a weekly slot on Fox and Friends.
You could say that Trump is the candidate Fox and Friends invented.
I do now.
Worked out well. Who's at the door? Oh, look, it's Donald Trump. Come on in, Mr.
Donald Trump in person. Every Monday is a Donald Trump Monday, but now in person for one reason. He hasn't seen Steve and I in a long time. Wrong.
You know,
nice to see you, Donald Trump.
He became the GOP nominee in waiting because of those weekly appearances on Fox and portraying himself as the savior, as the protector, as the one billionaire who would save them.
That's because of you guys. Donald Trump gets up in the morning, tweets to the entire planet at no cost, picks up the phone, calls you, has a great conversation for about 8 minutes, which would have cost him a ton in commercial money.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems.
Trump was leaning into the culture war. He understood what how the people were reacting, what they were resonating to. The immigration was the first one.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Political people said, oh, those are very bad things to say. That doesn't resonate with the people. They missed the boat on that. That absolutely resonated with people. People said, this guy's got it. He's absolutely right. So they wanted to hear more.
He says what I'm thinking.
Exactly.
Never been involved in politics, never had an interest in any of it. Now suddenly he is resonating. He is resonating with the people and he's speaking our minds.
He's resonating with the people. I've been following his campaign. And he's resonating with the people. Look at the people.
You would go and the people were cheering like it was some famous musician coming on stage. And instead, Trump came up and he attacked people.
ISIS is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS. Okay? He's the founder. He founded ISIS.
And it was almost like this underlying sentiment among the American people.
I want surveillance of certain mosques, okay? If that's okay.
And here's a guy that's just telling into it plain. He's not sugarcoating it. He's using, abusive words, whatever you want to call it.
I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
I met Trump at WrestleMania 5. I'd always been a WrestleMania. I'd always been a wrestling WWE fan. And then through Roger Stone, was reporting directly to him, working under Roger.
Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my kind. We have a movement going. We have something very special.
He called me and he's like, there's a movement, Sam. I feel it. It's electrifying. They love it. Everyone loves it.
It was electric to be a part of one of his rallies. It really was. It was amazing. You feel a certain fellowship and camaraderie with people who have like-minded thoughts, and desires. And yeah, it was wonderful. It was amazing.
It's called The Snake. I thought of it having to do with our borders and people coming in.
It was patriotic. That's all I can say. He told the snake poem, and it was wonderful.
Oh, shut up, silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in.
We did some polling on immigration early on, and the numbers actually weren't as supportive in favor of Trump as you might think. It was, do you support blocking immigration? Just general across the board. And people were very reticent to do that because they felt that was impinging on the American dream. However, if you rephrase the question, would you support a ban on immigration if it results in you losing your job, healthcare costs going up? So when we started reframing it, people were like, whoa, even legal immigrants we don't want this. We don't want illegal immigrants in our country. We're very much in favor of Trump.
They're taking our jobs, they're taking our manufacturing, they're taking our money, they're taking everything, and they're killing us on the border.
What the Trump campaign was saying about immigrants, jobs, and health care, it was a complete distortion. But again, the point was racial manipulation.
I was communicating with Stephen Miller while he was on the Trump campaign, while my Twitter feed was very active, very racist, very anti-Islam, and while I was writing racist articles for Breitbart. We were in communication, and we're both expressing pro-Trump sentiments with my company Breitbart email, and there's no problem with this. Breitbart, in my view, de facto advertising arm of the Trump campaign. And there was no real intervention from management at all.
I think the tone of these discussions matter when you're using them as wedge issues, as Republicans have done now. It's different. And it's really intended not to solve a social problem of borders, but it's about stirring up racial animus.
White Americans founded this country, but we are being pushed aside because of the present administration and the media, the liberal media.
I want to feel safe in our country, and I don't feel safe anywhere I go.
So when we're having this whole conversation, and I say, they're all going to talk about border security. You got to talk about building a wall. You got to talk about, you know what I mean? We're going to come in with a wall. This is a marriage between your business, your brand. It's like a real estate deal, right?
I will build a great, great wall on our southern border.
And I said, and then you say you'll get you'll get the Mexicans to pay for it because they're stealing from us.
And I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
So then he said, I'll make it a real estate deal. That's right, it's like a real estate deal. And he goes, and nobody builds like Trump.
Nobody builds walls better than me, believe me.
Nobody builds like Trump. He loves that line.
We're gonna make America great again, and we're gonna keep winning, winning, winning.
Now, when they say, what did make America great again mean? It meant, if you want to compare it to something, it meant Bill O'Reilly 8 p.m. It meant the culture war. It meant keeping America's, history.
And I guarantee, if I become president, we're gonna be saying Merry Christmas at every store. We're not gonna be doing.
Remember Barack Obama said change? No, we don't want change. That change is shit for a lot of reasons.
We're not allowed to punch back anymore. I love the old days. You know what they used to do to guys like that when they were in a place like this? They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks.
Why do you think Trump plays culture wars instead of old school Republican stories, lower taxes, small government?
Because that shit's boring and we're not going to win, okay? We're not going to win. I'll tell you why, because we're not going to win. It's boring.
I'll tell you what, that is one thing I really respect about Trump. He speaks his mind. He says what's on his mind. And we're in his best interest when he does.
Policy, straight up policy, that's Mitt Romney, okay? It ain't winning.
He's not so uptight. Everything's got to be PC.
I think he had to break through all the nonsense by being blunt.
Were you comfortable with how much of that white voter anger, resentment model you guys did in the Trump administration?
Well, when we looked at the white model, the white voter model in the Trump administration, again, we broke it down multiple ways.
What were you comfortable with?
Absolutely, yeah. Because from a political consultant standpoint, remember, you're trying to get every vote imaginable. I don't care where the votes come from. I need to make sure that the candidates' messages are focusing on those people. And so if Trump's messages, as an example, had focused more on black issues and black voters were our target, so be it. If that's where he was aligned, that's what you do. You take those messages and you use them to encourage supporters and voters to come out for your causes. It's that simple. And so it doesn't matter who we're targeting. We're targeting voters of all demographics, all persuasions, because that's how you win elections. When you win elections, you hold power.
I think a lot of politicians realize, well, this is playing the race card a little bit, but it gets votes, let's do it. It's not, I don't think, so much racism in the sense that I want to harm black people. It's more like opportunism in that I see something that can help me, so I'm going to do it, and I don't care.
Stephen Miller came on as speechwriter and senior policy advisor for Trump, and he began to use tactics that are often used by white supremacist groups to recruit people. Things like inserting very graphic, gory descriptions of migrant crimes into Trump's speeches.
Brutally beaten and left to bleed to death.
And into his policy proposals. For example, the immigration plan that Trump put out in 2015 references this migrant taking a hammer and bashing in a woman's eye sockets.
Beaten to death with a hammer.
And you got the undesirables who just come in and wreak havoc, so they got to have some control over it.
You're going to turn on the TV and see somebody fight as hard for you as the other side fights for illegal immigrants.
Stephen Miller was introduced to me right before Trump ran, and it was with the understanding that it wasn't explicitly written in email, but Stephen would pitch to you. And what that meant was Stephen would, tell you what to write. It's common for reporters to receive pitches from politicians' offices. What is not common is for a ostensible news site to receive a press release, like as Breitbart did, ghostwritten by Miller, to put under the byline of Breitbart News and to make it the lead of the Breitbart News website.
How many children are dead because of our sanctuary cities?
When I was in middle school, my brother was good friends with Stephen Miller. And one day, starting in high school, Stephen Miller told most of his friends, who were mostly brown because this was Los Angeles, I can't be your friend anymore because you have a family of immigrants, your family's Mexican, your parents don't speak English, whatever it was. I actually have tried to figure out the nicest thing I could say about Stephen Miller, which is that he didn't hide behind a computer screen. He would get up in front of the whole school in an assembly of thousands of kids and literally have things thrown at him and say,
am I the only one who is sick and tired of being told to pick up my trash when we have plenty of janitors who are paid to do it for us?
He did it for the shock value, and it made him, a mini superstar in the regional conservative media.
I will say and I will do things that no one else in their right mind would say or do.
In some ways, I think that made him valuable to the White House. He was writing a playbook that hadn't been written yet.
Miller is obsessed with immigration, and he would email me after a story was up and try to flatter me, saying, it was such a great story. I told Bannon about this. And then Bannon will reply, this is great. Katie wrote a great article. Just things like that to make a 24-year-old girl feel better about the racist screed she just wrote.
They, put out the false migrant crime statistics that migrants are responsible for thousands of deaths in America every year.
Sadly, people are murdered all the time by illegals, as we have detailed on this program.
When the reality is that maybe 3 or 4 deaths a year as a result of immigrant crimes.
We're talking about it because Donald Trump brought this up as a campaign issue.
They repeatedly exploited the death of Kate Steinle.
Kate Steinle, gunned down in the sanctuary city of San Francisco.
A blonde, blue-eyed woman shot to death in San Francisco by an immigrant who was mentally ill and who was later found not guilty of murder.
The jury found Jose Inez Garcia Zarate not guilty of murder or manslaughter.
This story, this beautiful young woman who died a tragic death, it was seized on by the Trump campaign, by Breitbart, to push the anti-immigrant agenda.
Kate Steinle, 32-year-old Kate Steinle.
You can take a highly emotional, horrible story and take that family's grief and turn it into a cynical campaign to gain power and to demonize immigrants.
Our hearts broke as a nation last summer when Kate Steinle was murdered in cold blood.
We had already, decided as like our own judge and jury, that this person was guilty. Therefore, we have to curb immigration to stop the crime, to stop our beautiful young white women from being harmed by immigrants.
The Steinle case, so you would write these stories, and what would people say?
People would react by saying justice for Kate Steinle, almost as a way to express their anger at immigration policies that they weren't even aware of before the far right and the Trump campaign brought them to their attention.
So, I propose Kate's Law.
The Kate Steinle thing, we got offered on the Jeb campaign. Bill O'Reilly's producer called and said, quid pro quo, Jeb can come on the show tonight, if he will support the Kate's Law or whatever.
And if Kate's Law doesn't pass, then the world will know which senators and congresspeople are truly villainous.
And as long as he talks about how important it is that we have this new law that cracks down on illegal immigrant crime.
To sweep dangerous foreign nationals here illegally off the streets of America.
I kind of think I was for him doing it, actually, now that I look back on it, because one cog in the wheel, fuck it. Kate's Law, sure, we'll support Kate's Law. That'll get him a hit on Bill O'Reilly. We're getting our ass kicked in the polls. Maybe this will help. But the policy guys, or maybe Jeb himself, said that they didn't support Kate's Law for some reason. I don't even remember what the particulars are of it. But this is just another prime example of the conservative media creating outrage, creating fear over something, the voters then feeling like they should be afraid of it, and then politicians feeling like they need to play into that as well in order to, make the voters like them.
Aren't you close to xenophobia? You're talking about expelling millions and millions of people.
We have to clean up the country. Our country is a mess.
It's true that Trump appeals to open racists, but it's a big mistake to think that Trump's intention is to create a coalition of open racists, of skinheads and Klan members and Proud Boys. That's not what he's doing. Trump is looking for language that can scare people with racist stories, where those people genuinely believe they're not racist.
I am the least racist person that you have ever met.
Trump is not racist. I don't understand how people can say, that, we're racist, we're this, we're that, we're that. We don't care. We welcome everybody. We're in the United States of America, and that's what it's all about.
Don't ever let anybody tell you that you're not a good person because you want to secure the border.
They had to persuade those white voters who had voted for Barack Obama and Bill Clinton not to vote for me based on all kinds of attacks that, lit people up.
Hillary would let everybody come in, killers, criminals, drug dealers.
Fuck Islam! Fuck them!
The Muslims, the immigrants, all of that was just in general designed to either discourage people from voting for Democrats, namely in 2016, me, or to switch them to vote for the Republicans.
We've got to be cautious with these new people coming in that we don't get ISIS moving in and terrorists that we don't even know.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives
can figure out what the hell is going on.
What about when he proposed banning Muslims? Were you around for that?
No, I had talked to him about doing it. I said, when there's a terrorist attack, and there will be domestically, because they're already attacking us, you know, ISIS and everything, propose a Muslim ban, propose something. And he goes to me, why don't you fucking propose that? You want me to get killed? You want me to get killed? I'd even thought about, we had such sick shit. I never told him this, but I had even thought about, like, claiming that, like, the cartel leaders, we had to stop a plot for the cartel leaders to kidnap him during the campaign. I thought it would help us politically.
The point at which I decided I could no longer be a registered Republican was during the Republican convention when Trump was being nominated, and he went, following the Republican convention, he went after the mother of a Muslim soldier who was killed.
If you look at his wife, she was standing there. She had nothing to say. Maybe she wasn't allowed to have anything to say. You tell me.
I thought, this is not my party. How are we letting this man be nominated? Why is no one in leadership speaking out and saying that's wrong? Most people look the other way to preserve their own power.
Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States, winning the most unreal, surreal election we have ever seen.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Complicated business. Complicated.
With Trump in particular, he realized, you know what? I don't have to be subtle. My base loves it. We can manufacture the villain and they'll eat it up. Hell, I became president off it. So when Charlottesville happens, I don't have to condemn the Nazis.
We're following breaking news out of Virginia. The governor has declared a state of emergency in Charlottesville after white supremacist protests turned violent in that town.
I talked to Trump that day. He called me, and I explained to him what I had seen on the ground, what I had heard. And he says, Terry, what do you want me to do? I said, Mr. President, this is your moment. And I said, let me be very clear. You got to come out. You need to condemn the white supremacists who are here. Call them out by name, that white supremacy is not acceptable behavior. And you need to call out the neo-Nazis. He said, okay, I'll do it. Great, felt pretty good. I waited 4 hours to do my press conference, but I wanted the president to speak because, you know, he has the biggest bully pulpit and he can, you know, bring us together if he says the right words. And he didn't. He came out and said there were good people on both sides.
You also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
You know exactly what happened. He agreed with me on the phone. Yes, Terry, I'll come out and say that. Great, terrific. So what happened in those 4 hours? Was it Bannon? Was it Miller? Somebody in the White House got to him and said, no, sir. No, you will not condemn neo-Nazis and white supremacists because these are wedge issues to drive out their voters. And he wasn't going to do anything that would offend any of his voters.
We crafted a statement in that example, and he marked it up, didn't like some of the soft language you used, wanted to use harder language.
I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
The number of enemies that the right is putting up on the board, if you don't feel right about not, being, nice to black people, and maybe you've got immigrants working for you, well, then let's find another target that you can, be upset about. And of course, if you're an Asian American, maybe you brought COVID over, so yell at them.
The Wuhan virus.
The Wuhan virus.
They called it the Chinese virus, the Wuhan virus, the Kung flu.
I can name Kung flu.
This China virus.
The president continues to call this the Chinese virus.
It came from China.
The problem with calling it the China virus is then people associate any Chinese person with the virus.
Hate crimes against Asian Americans spiking since the pandemic began a year ago.
And then it became shocking in the violence.
Tonight, Attorney General Merrick Garland pointing to an alarming rise in violent attacks against Asian Americans.
I was attacked on the street near Columbia at night
Nearly 3,800 anti-Asian hate incidents from March 2020 through February have been reported.
There's always been hate movements in American politics, right? I mean, you go back to Father Coughlin.
I challenge every Jew in this nation.
And the Klan, I mean, there's tons. What's different about this moment is that anger and hate and grievance has been adopted as fundamentally true to a major American political party, the Republican Party. That hasn't happened before, not in our lifetime.
Donald Trump woke us up. They have awakened a sleeping giant with a terrible resolve.
The Republican Party, this isn't an aberration of the Republican Party. It is a racially driven grievance party, and it's comfortable with being that. I would love to believe that Liz Cheney's the future of the Republican Party. It's not. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the future of the Republican Party.
Joe Biden's 5 million illegal aliens are on the verge of replacing you, replacing your jobs, and replacing your kids in school.
You can achieve power by opening Pandora's box, but it's dangerous, right? So I think the generation of politicians who did have that living memory of the Nazi experience and World War II, and the acres and acres of blood that were caused by demagogues who were unleashing the fears of the public. They understood that there was power to be gained from that, but that it has to be used very judiciously. The fascinating thing about Donald Trump is he completely flips over that whole game board, and he turns the dog whistle into the train whistle. It would have been impossible for him to do this without kind of the ground being laid by 55 years of Republican dog whistling.
We will also be a country of law and order.
Trump dusted off the Nixon machine, and he did a software upgrade, rebooted it, and ran it in 2016.
We need to restore respect for law and order in the United States of America.
I actually was part of a program at Wellesley College, and my professors assigned me to work for the Republican House Conference Committee. I remember going to Nixon's speech once he got nominated in the summer of 1968, and I thought it was very dark.
We see Americans hating each other, fighting each other, killing each other at home.
Looking back now, you can see all of the trend lines that he was pulling together.
If we fail in the battle against crime, then we fail not only ourselves, but our heritage and the future of our children.
I am your president of law and order. Law and order.
The video of an officer with his knee on Floyd's neck as Floyd pleads for his life has shocked Americans.
In recent days, our nation has been gripped by professional anarchists, violent mobs, arsonists, looters, criminals, rioters, Antifa, and others.
Washington, D.C. besieged by peaceful protest, unified in the message painted on the road below their feet. Black Lives Matter.
George Floyd's death happens in a context of the pandemic. We're all stuck at home. We can't go anywhere. We all watch it together. And there's something about that that not only sparks kind of this large global movement, but also sparks something else within a subtext of this constituency that is deeply antagonistic towards questions of race.
Stop the nonsense. These are killers, and these are people who hate white people. They're people who hate white men in particular.
Black Lives Matter and the domestic terrorists posing as protesters, aka Antifa.
There was some violence at Black Lives Matter protests, to be sure, but research shows the overwhelming majority of the protests were entirely peaceful.
A peaceful Black Lives Matter protest was held overnight.
Very peaceful here today.
To peacefully protest the death of George Floyd.
How many innocent Americans have these people hurt? How many have they murdered? We don't know that number.
When you say Black Lives Matter, that's inherently racist.
First time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, I said, that's a terrible name. It's so discriminatory. It's bad for black people. It's bad for everybody.
I first really started hearing and listening to Black Lives Matter last summer, summer of 2020.
Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization.
The president calls it a Marxist organization. I do too.
Black Lives Matter doesn't really care about black lives.
I don't believe that Black Lives Matter really cares about black lives.
holding a high-powered rifle and wielding a pistol. In these now viral images, Mark and Patricia McCloskey looked ready for a gunfight as a protest moved through their mansion-lined St. Louis neighborhood.
Get the hell out of my neighborhood! They were charged on Monday with gun crimes, placing those protesters in fear of injury. And the protesters, by all reports, were quite peaceful.
George Floyd was murdered, let's say, by a white policeman, okay? I said this on television a couple of weeks ago. When a cop kills a thug, we're supposed to change the world over it. But we have this national outrage, allegedly, because George Floyd was killed by a policeman, okay? And that's discrimination.
They thought they needed to defend themselves by taking up arms, as if they themselves were under threat. When it's the racist story that's really doing the violence here.
The McCloskeys standing out on their lawns with rifles shown was definitely a symbol for me. It was a symbol that we are going to have to stand up for our rights.
Mark McCloskey will be among the speakers at next week's Republican National Convention.
No matter where you live, your family will not be safe.
I mean, Richard Nixon was simplistic compared to what we've got now.
The mob, spurred on by their allies in the media, will try to destroy you.
These people play for keeps. They want to work hand in hand with their media outlets, now their social media outlets, and they think they're on the brink of being very successful.
The path to power here, what we're going to do is that you have to start at the school board level.
Republican Glenn Youngkin has been elected governor of Virginia.
Youngkin targeting the fury over critical race theory, which is not taught in Virginia schools, but the issue becoming a lightning rod for conservatives.
I helped behind the scenes in the Youngkin campaign in Virginia. The education was the cultural war issue. It was the issue that was divisive. It drove people to anger and frustration, and that's motivated them to come out and vote. They brought crying moms, they brought crying children up to the stage. They used that as a campaign issue to leverage that position and to win that governorship, and he did.
The moms of America, many of whom will spit on the floor at the sound of Donald Trump's name, okay, are our natural allies in this.
We are an army of moms and parents that will not stop until we're heard.
Amen. No critical race.
Critical race theory is American history. No, it's Marxist history, intended to deconstruct and divide.
It's all strategy. Look, I mean, critical race theory is truly taught only in law schools.
I directed the Florida Department of Education to prohibit critical race theory.
It's a way of thinking about how the legal system helped to support and enforce segregation.
Critical race theory is anti-white, and it's not American.
This language about critical race theory, you didn't have to know what it was. It just had the language critical, race, and theory in there. Those three words then became a powerful dog whistle.
The Biden administration is pushing toxic critical race theory and illegal discrimination into our children's schools.
What happens specifically now, specifically what we're dealing with in a post George Floyd world, where there was mass protests against the murder of George Floyd, and people are like, you know what, we need to do a little bit more for diversity, for equity, for inclusion. You know what, we need to have more people of color speak out. We need to read a little bit more books by Black authors, because it's the reality we live in, and this makes some people uncomfortable. It's not a perfect science.
This is a racist, vile, and evil ideology that has infected this once great school district.
So, with CRT, they're like, aha, what we can do is we can take parental concern over some of these books that are being taught with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we can manufacture a villain.
Good propaganda is always wrapped in a seed of truth. You know, you take one little truth that you can kind of put up on the pedestal, and then you wrap all this bullshit around it.
This is re-education. This is indoctrination of our children. And it is so destructive, the only way I can truly describe it is evil.
I think critical race theory is wrong, and I don't think it should be taught in schools at all.
What I've discovered is that critical race theory has become, in essence, the default ideology of the federal bureaucracy and is now being weaponized against the American people.
With the mask mandates particularly, then the vaccine mandates, and then CRT and how CRT and social emotional learning, SEL, exploded, that was a galvanizing, organizing principle at the school board level and galvanize the American parents.
School officials tell me this was the largest group they've ever had attend a school board meeting.
Just because you guys changed the name to equity does not mean it's not the same thing as the critical race theory.
I mean, those kinds of sound bites where people go, well, I don't want my child indoctrinated. I want my child educated. Why can't we have real education? Why do we have to have this indoctrination?
Dr. James Whitfield, the first black principal at Colleyville Heritage High School, officially removed from his position during an emotional school board meeting. All of it over what he says was a false accusation of promoting critical race theory.
I mean, this is brilliant that we're now having national debates about what happens in classrooms. It's brilliant.
Go and run for your school board. Get on to your city council. Do whatever you have to do to protect what's being taught in our schools.
The folks who are into the sound bites never have to define it.
The goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory.
They ply on a fear, they ply on the feelings that what this is doing is this is an assault against your children, and we are here to protect your children.
Getting critical race theory out of our schools is not just a matter of values, it's also a matter of national survival. We have no choice. The fate of any nation ultimately depends upon the willingness of its citizens to lay down, and they must do this, lay down their very lives to defend their country.
What happened on January 6th? You had the American flag taken down, the Trump flag raised, and the Confederate flag raised inside the capital of the United States. They did what the 9/11 terrorists failed to do.
The president invited me, and he invited me, I had to come.
And the Republican Party had a chance to hold Trump accountable, and they blinked.
How is that about white being white?
Well, how many black people did you see on breaking into the Capitol? Not many. How many, anytime you're carrying Confederate flags, it's about race.
The Oath Keepers were there, the 3 percenters were there, also the QAnon networks, also the Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Nations, white Christian nationalist groups, multiple religious cults were there, and many other groups like that.
Some of them would try to recruit me. One of them came up to me and said, "Are you my brother?"
Racism, whether we want to admit it or not, was an undercurrent to what happened on January 6th.
Apparently they seen, even through my mask, they saw my skin color and said, "You're not even an American."
Like, we just have to cut through the bullshit and call it for what it was.
One woman in a pink MAGA shirt yelled, "You hear that, guys? They voted for Joe Biden." Then the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo, fuck."
The majority of the folk who were arrested came from places where white population is in decline. This fear of being displaced, this fear of being replaced, right, is driving political behavior, driving folk to engage in something as dramatic as assaulting the Capitol itself.
So here's what terrifies him, right? Of Americans 15 years and under, the majority are non-white. So odds are really, really, really good they're going to turn 18 and still be non-white. And that's the end of the Republican Party if they let these people vote. Of the new census right now, only 1 out of every 10 new Americans is white. That's what they're afraid of. That's what it's about. All the Stephen Millers in the world can't stop that from happening.
I don't think you can really find an example in history of a country where a racial majority has lost its top spot in its political power and hegemony to a multicultural arrangement without there being violence and tremendous trauma and dislocation. And the people who are organizing the violence and the assault on democratic institutions are perfectly well aware of what they're doing and what their propaganda messages are. And they're mobilizing that anxiety and that hatred around scapegoats and then around attacks on democracy itself.
We have to begin to draw the through line. There are those who believe that culturally and demographically they're under threat.
There is a plan. The plan was to infiltrate 100 million illegal immigrants, and these people would dilute what they called the pool of patriots.
Demographic change is the key to the Democratic Party's political ambitions. In order to win and maintain power, Democrats plan to change the population of the country.
One of the best examples, I think, of an idea that was on the fringe that has moved into the mainstream is the Great Replacement theory.
Democrats believe that they have to repeal and replace the American electorate.
In political terms, this policy is called the Great Replacement.
This is this idea that white, kind of European descent people are being culturally and demographically replaced by people of color.
The replacement of legacy Americans with more obedient people from faraway countries.
So in April 2021, you have Tucker Carlson on his show explicitly endorse the Great Replacement theory.
To reduce the political power of people whose ancestors lived here and dramatically increase the proportion of Americans newly arrived from the Third World.
And this sent a shockwave through the white supremacist community, who are talking about how, well, Tucker Carlson just red-pilled millions of people because of his reach.
The people at the top don't necessarily believe in replacement theory.
The Great Replacement plan.
At the top, it's seen as an opportunity. You know, it's seen as a strategy. It's seen as a way to make money and gain power. So I think we have to differentiate between, you know, the people that are kind of moving the pawns around the chessboard and the people that are just being moved around and not even know about it, that they are actually pawns. Who think that their place in society, in American society, is being taken away from them and given to someone else who's not American.
Talk to me about this term invasion. When you hear that term being thrown out like that, it really it causes you to pause for a second.
When you look at the social demographic economic data, it does not align itself with the fear that we see these people having. They've not been displaced from positions of power. They've not been displaced from the workforce, but they don't rely upon facts as fiction. And if I can create a sense, whether perceived or real, that even what we have now, which is diminished, is going to be gone altogether, then that creates an even greater cauldron of fear and calamity.
This is a different type of invasion, intended one day in the next 15 to 20 years to become citizens and to become voters. So the Democrats, in their view, have a lock on this country forever.
They want to replace the American electorate with a third world electorate.
48% of Americans, overall Americans, agreed that demographic changes were part of a, quote, purposeful plan to replace white voters.
The data shows, social scientists and political scientists have shown, that particularly among white evangelical Republican men, the feeling of cultural and demographic threat is heightened to the point to where they are susceptible to violence.
What would solve the whole thing in the border if they would just start shooting? Only shoot a couple and they would go home.
Panic in El Paso this morning when a day of shopping turned into horror with an active shooter on the loose.
You think about El Paso. The shooter, young man comes down, and what does he do? In the name of what? 2,300-page manifesto.
Law enforcement officials in Texas say they believe he wrote an essay on the internet and posted it an hour or so before the shooting. It says the attack was motivated by anti-immigrant hatred.
In the name of the fear that we're going to be replaced.
Shots rang out just before 10 a.m.
We're under fire.
We're under fire.
The chaos unfolding at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh.
You think about Pittsburgh, the shooter said this global Jewish cabal is funding, right, these immigrants to change the very nature of the country. And look what happened, the slaughter.
He had posted about the caravan of migrants moving up from Central America, called them invaders.
Deadly violence at a house of worship in San Diego. One person is dead after a synagogue shooting.
In his manifesto, he says Jews are planning a genocide of the European race.
Police say 13 people were shot, 10 of them killed Saturday afternoon at this Tops Friendly Market in Northeast Buffalo.
The young man who walks into the supermarket in Buffalo. Now that's just the spectacle of bloody violence.
My wife and I had been over in Niagara Falls. Coming back, my sister-in-law called and said, "Did you hear about what happened at Tops?" I said, "No, I didn't hear anything."
Breaking news out of Buffalo, New York. A mass shooting at a Tops grocery store.
And I told my wife, I'm going and check on my mom because Tops is only a couple of blocks from the nursing home that she goes to every day to take care of my dad. News had started coming out. I go down to Tops. She drove a 2020 black Hyundai. My mom was a thrift shopper and all that, so she would always have a bunch of crap in the car. I'm saying, like, you know, she would have signs like, God is my co-pilot. She would handwrite with maybe a nail polish or something and put it in the window. That's my mom. Anyway, it was my mom's car. The detective went in and he didn't come back, which makes me know that she's in there. I was by myself. I was crying. And they came and they put their arms around me and confirmed what I already knew, that she was in there. And there's nothing to say. What are you going to say? I mean, what could they have said?
Authorities also say the manifesto revealed the suspect was motivated by something called replacement theory.
My dad's a couple blocks away, you know. It made 68 years, man. She was his caretaker. You understand? Every day, she took care of him. She's the only reason he was alive. I mean, what am I going to say to him?
The things we talk about, the words we use, the notions we put out there, they become reality.
The coronation of Kamala Harris is underway.
Marxist Kamala Harris, Comrade Kamala.
You can say Kamala, you can say Kamala. I said, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter what I say. I couldn't care less if I mispronounce it or not.
And the more of a camera and the more of a platform we give that type of messaging, those words, the more actions are taken, and those actions go on to create the reality that we live in.
People who work in conservative media are going to keep selling fear.
She is a radical, cratering our sense of self, our southern border, our national identity.
They've seen that it's worked, and they're going to continue to do it.
The first Samoan, Malaysian, low IQ, former California prosecutor.
Think about the types of people that are being drawn to Donald Trump's party. Think about what the 22-year-old is like, who says, I want to sign up for this, right? That's a category difference, like a type of person than had gotten into politics in the past.
I am worried about more violence, I am. And, I think it's something that's gonna affect people across the country.
I'm optimistic because I'm a preacher, I'm a pastor, I'm a believer, so my hope is not of this world. My hope is built on nothing less. So, listen, I lived long enough because I lived through the civil rights movement, I lived through the Vietnam War protest movement, and I've seen things get better and I've seen things get worse. And I know sometimes it takes what we're going through now to get people motivated to do what is necessary to change this. It's not going to happen watching the evening news and being disgusted. It's not going to happen calling your friend and sharing your sentiments and ventilating, your frustration. There are enough good people of all hues and colors and stations of life who really believe that this ought to be a country that's open to all and that embraces diversity and sees what we presently experiencing as insanity and racism and prejudice and hatred.
I've been trying to teach the young people that for most of the existence of our species, people have lived under bullies and dictators and kings, people like Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. Democracy is totally the exception. That's the magnificence of America. That's why people love America. Because even with the flawed beginnings we have with slavery and so on, the ideals were there to create the world's greatest multiracial, multicultural, multi-religious democracy. And we're on the path to getting there if the dictators don't catch up and destroy all our institutions first.
One, two.
So much film.